So today we want to talk about something that you and I are really both passionate about, and that's new construction.
Yeah.
And you and I have a long track record in construction. We're not general contractors by any means, but we just enjoy the process so much. You know, we were selling real estate together while Jared was still at BYU. This was many years ago. And I don't know why you did this. It broke my heart. When he graduated from BYU, he got recruited by a new home builder. I think it's one of the largest home builders in the country. Recruited you to come down, to move your little family down to Mississippi, of all places, and sell new homes.
You weren't paying me enough back then.
You didn't enjoy working for me. That was heartbreaking to see you and your family go. I guess you wanted to put that fancy degree to good use.
Well, I thought it was a good move, and professionally I learned quite a few things. Missed out on a few things that you did while I was gone, but ultimately I think it's made me a better real estate agent, a better realtor. And of course, gained new construction knowledge.
Yeah, and I think you were helping clients, weren't you, from really the entire process through? I mean, helping them tweak the floor plan and helping them with the financing. Talk maybe a little bit more about your experience there.
Yeah. Well, this was a pretty large home builder. We had many offices throughout the Southeast United States. I think we were building somewhere around 1,500 to 1,600 homes a year on scattered lots, so we weren't developing subdivisions or anything like that. A lot of people have family land there, and so mom and dad will cut off a couple of acres of their property and give it to their kids to build on. And so I was helping them pick out a number of different floor plans. We had an in-house design staff that could make any changes to our floor plans. So I'd take them through and redline those plans and develop something that really fit their needs. We had a home fitting center right there in our location where they could pick out all their flooring, paint colors, cabinets, countertops, that sort of thing. I actually helped them get their financing for that. We helped them sometimes go through that subdivision process and get the title work done to make that happen, and priced everything out. So we'd start with a base price, and then we'd go through and let them put some options in there, some upgrades, whatever they want to do, and I had to price that out. And then eventually I'd make a handoff to the production side. So it was really a good experience, and I sold a lot of homes during that over 2 year period and learned a lot of things.
Yeah, that was a tough time for me because you were away, and that was actually the years that I started Home Basics Real Estate, and so I started the company, and you were not there, and I was not very organized because Jared's the brains of this operation. I'll freely admit that.
That was, I got there in Mississippi in 2003, and we left 2005, so I was there for just over a couple of years.
I started the brokerage February of 2004.
Correct.
But so you've got tons of new construction experience, and you and I both have new construction experience in that we have built a number of different projects. So, for example, we're in a building that we developed and built in 2008. I have built 2 custom homes for my family. One of the tougher build jobs that we did together was building our dream cabin up in the woods. They say if a husband and wife can make it through the build process and they still love each other, I mean you've got a pretty good relationship.
That's true.
If you're trying to build a home with your twin brother and your wife and his wife, I mean, that is a test of all patience and all love.
It caused a little friction.
Here and there. And our other brother happens to be a general contractor, and he was the one that was contracting that cabin for us. And
that's Aaron, our brother Aaron, Centurion Homes, put a plug in for them. They're very, very
awesome
good.
builders. We have also been involved in several spec homes. 1 year, when we were young and much dumber, we had bought 8 lots down in Provo, beautiful subdivision, Sandalwood, and we were building some spec homes down there. So we've just been around that, and I would venture a guess that we've probably represented well over 150, 200 clients through the build process.
That's a very common scenario for us, is to go through that process with our clients.
So because the inventory has been a little bit sparse over the last few years, sometimes we will take a client through everything that's in the existing realm there, and then sometimes we turn to new construction. People say, hey, I'd love to build a home. And I like to hear that. I think it's such a wonderful process. I I kind of desire that everybody could have that experience at one point or another. And so today we want to talk about how to build a home. We're going to talk specifically about working with a semi-custom builder versus going the custom route. I mean, it's all you, baby. So let's talk a little bit more about that and maybe differentiate the two and talk about some costs and so on and so forth. New construction is very exciting, but it is expensive. No matter what route you go, semi-custom or custom, it's probably going to cost you more. This is a pretty obvious statement to get a brand new home rather than one that is, existing. Even if the existing home might only be 10 to 15 years old, the costs associated with building are quite a bit more. And so we'll kind of outline that for you. But production builders, and what do we mean by that? If you're listening local, there are some great production builders. We have Ivory Homes. We have, and I'm not endorsing any of these. I'm just saying these are local homegrown companies. They're not so homegrown now. They've actually blossomed into very large companies. Right. We have Ivory. We've got Edge. We've got Arrive. We've got some of the big boys like D.R. Horton. We have David Weekley Homes, Salisbury.
Decent products.
I mean, we've got a lot of builders to choose from. So depending on what price range you're in, and depending what areas you're in, because some areas offer more new construction opportunities, we can take a couple of days, a couple of outings, and try to explore all of those different builders that are out there. Right. And you would do very well to kind of get a feel for, the pricing from this builder and the location of that builder and some of the standard features and all that stuff. It's a lot to weed through and a lot to understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a couple of things to consider too is, we've had great experiences with a lot of different builders in this valley, and we've had some bad experiences as well, or our clients have, I should say. But sometimes it really comes down to as well to the location and the community. I mean, if you're attracted to that particular community and it's that builder is the one that's building in it, then that's maybe sometimes who you go with. But like you mentioned, taking the time to go around and talk to different builders and see different communities and see the type of construction, the quality of construction, what's included as standards and things like that, I think is time really, really well spent. You just don't jump right into that.
Right. So production builders or semi-custom builders, they can keep the costs down. So I'm going to state right now, semi-custom building is cheaper than custom building in almost all cases. And how do production builders keep their costs down? Well, there's a few ways that they do that. Number one, they build the same floor plan over and over. In a particular community, they might offer just a handful, 5 to 7 floor plans, which they will repeat over and over and over. And you may not know that from the outside because they can change up the elevation and things like that. But really, that's what they're doing, is they're just building the same home over and over. And when you do that, you know the costs. There are no surprises. There's nothing that needs to be tweaked. There's nothing that's going to need to be redone. Your subs all know those floor plans backwards and forwards. They can really crank those out. And I don't mean to say that like, they're going through a factory and, your home is going to be produced at the end.
You're still getting a quality
You're still
product.
getting a good quality home there. The cities are, of course, very much involved in that entire process. But that's one of the reasons why they can keep the cost down. Another reason is some of these big builders, they're buying all the products, including the kitchen cabinets in bulk. Some of it is coming out of China. You'll notice, and if you go to some builders, that even though there's a 2-story home or there might be a Rambler home that they can build for you, the kitchen might be the exact same dimension.
Yeah,
it's the same kitchen. It's the same amount of cabinets. So that's one of the reasons why they're able to do that. But talk about sub pricing. What can a semi-custom builder offer to a subcontractor?
Well, they can keep a subcontractor busy in an economy like we're having right now for years, literally. And so subs, again, get very familiar with the framers, are very familiar with all the floor plans. They know all the ins and outs of it. They can go from one lot to the one next door to the one down the street and just frame these homes up. And so these subcontractors are willing to give a really great price to just kind of stay on site in that community.
Exactly right. Yeah, I mean, they don't have to take any time in their business to market or
go through the sales process,
or
the bidding
giving
process.
An estimate to somebody.
Yeah.
They're just work. And it is like a circus. it's organized. I
Yeah.
shouldn't say it's a circus like it's disorganized, but it's amazing what
It really is
what
cool.
crews, when properly directed, can accomplish over the course of a month and a half or 2 months. The really big production builders, and this is one of the ways that they can keep costs down. They're not only the builders of the homes, but they're the ones that originally acquired and purchased the real estate, the ground, the raw ground, and developed it. And when you are in that league, then there's some tremendous savings and profit for them, savings for you, because they took a piece of raw ground and developed it into the lots.
That's a really good point. I mean, there's profit in there for the builder developer on the land, and there's profit in the actual construction of the home. And so in that case, you're able to double dip and build something that's affordable and pass those savings on to you. So the fact that they've bought a big piece of land and developed it and now selling it to you as end user, you're getting some savings there.
Yeah, and that's really where the building process starts to some degree, is how much does a piece of ground cost you? How much does a building lot cost you? Let me state something that I think is really important for people to know. Builders love working with realtors. We have been to fancy parties. They've invited us out for luncheons and drawings and just show up. And we take that seriously because it's an opportunity for us to get to know a new community. There's new communities all throughout our community, our county, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got to be the new construction experts. We went out to one the other day. They gave us a $50 gift card just for coming out to their party, and I didn't know about that community. Well, just the next week, I took a buyer right in there because I was so impressed with the townhome. It was actually a townhome community. I wasn't impressed so much with the $50 gift card.
Yeah, but that was a good investment on their part.
It was a good
to bring
investment
you
on their
out
part
there and
to bring me, because I
showcase the
haven't done
property.
a deal with that builder, and I brought an investor through actually, and they bought a townhome as a
that's
rental
really cool.
property,
Yeah.
and it's because of that. So they love working with realtors. They really depend a great deal on our participation, and they want to compensate us too. So there is a commission involved. And so let's talk about that a little bit. When you're thinking about building a semi-custom home, give us a call, because there's so much value that we can add to this whole entire process, and we can protect you in a whole lot of ways. But what happens when a buyer just walks into a model home?
They get the exact same price on that home than if they would have had us come in there with them and make that introduction and accompany them through that model home. And so the builders are not giving us savings to buyers who are unrepresented.
Yeah. So in other words, it really doesn't cost you anything to have our representation and our input, and we can add, again, so much to this. If there were a pair of realtors that really could add to that new construction discussion, it is us, because of your experience with a national home builder, our experience building a lot of different projects. So we can add a lot. So that's one of the things that we really want to tell you, is we can help you go through a dozen communities. We can help you digest all that information. By the way, sometimes when we go through a community, I probably should have put this in the outline. Some builders that we know are building spec homes. Mm-hmm. Isn't that nice? That's a home that's already in the ground, framed, probably a month and a half, 2 months from being completed. Maybe there's a few choices that you could still make, maybe not. But that's probably one thing that that's worth hitting. That some of these builders, and we know about them because how many lists do you get every week? It's builders' lists of spec homes.
Right.
And we have great relationships with these semi-custom builders and their representatives, that sometimes they'll give us a call or email us about a home where somebody was building it. It was being built for a person and they backed out.
Yeah, they might have got an unexpected job transfer.
I
it's
just
very common.
actually, with a client of ours, I feel like we got just a steal of a deal on a home where somebody had backed out. The home had just been completed and they couldn't get their financing. So my buyers came along, and this home was already complete. It's new construction. It's beautiful. They didn't get to pick anything, but we got a very, very good deal on that home. So spec homes are something that we can also help you look at. But builders want us. They want to participate with us, and actually we make their job easier. So we want to be involved in that. But don't walk into a model home on your own. That can cut us out. And so bless us by allowing us to be a part of that transaction.
Well, I think a couple of things, and you've touched on them already, that we can add to that transaction as your representative. Number one, these builder contracts are different.
Yeah.
And when I represent somebody, I read through those contracts.
Yes.
And of course, I encourage my clients to as well. But there are things in that contract that I might see, and I point those out to my client, not saying that, oh, this is unusual or something like that, but just make sure that they understand, like,
Yeah.
when is their construction deposit due and when it becomes non-refundable.
Right.
Being on site during the construction process, information about, at the end of the process, and making sure they understand how that goes. So contract review, I think, is really important.
And, with these big builders, there's not a lot of contract negotiation. And I will tell you right up front that these contracts are written by their attorneys, and they are almost comically slanted
very
towards
much so.
the builder. And so it's not that we're bringing up these things so that we can go renegotiate.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to do that in most cases, but you just need to know what you're really signing there, which is important.
The other thing, too, is, and I actually really enjoy this, is I do show up for the different points along the way of the construction process. So sometimes there's a pre-construction meeting. I like to go to those. We like to go through the home at four-way to make sure before they put the drywall on that my clients have gotten everything they wanted to get. So we're looking at electrical items, plumbing items, make sure those are all in the right place, because that's the time to correct that before the drywall goes on. And then we're doing that walkthrough and helping them find items that still need to be tuned up, helping them create that punch list, things that my clients are missing that I'm seeing that need to still be done. And sometimes builders will tell a client, no, we don't want to do that, or we don't do that, or that's normal. I'll say, no, this is not normal. This is outside the specifications and the tolerances of the industry, and I'm able to then sort of be a champion for my clients and go to bat for them through that process. So we really do want to add value to that relationship with the builder.
Well, and thank you for adding those comments. I would I'll back up just a little bit and say, when we go through a model home together, the first thing I want to remind you is your home probably won't look like the model. And why is that? The model home is fully loaded, is it not? I mean, they're trying to showcase everything that they could do for your home.
Right.
And one of the real challenges of new construction, even in semi-custom building, is buyers want to know what the price is out the door. And that is a very, very hard number to get to. And there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, you have to be aware of the base prices. If you go into a model home and you see the way it's decked out, we always ask, well, what is the base price of this model? And we can get generally a pretty solid number on what the base price is. And a lot of builders reps are going to tell you, well, it's changing every day. And that is actually a true statement. But we can usually get to the base price. And then you have this situation where, well, where would we want to build it within this community? We look at what lots are still available. And the base price, that includes a base lot.
Right.
But many lots, if they're bigger, if they're more level, if they have a view, if they're close to the park or other amenities, do they back up to a busy street? Most lots have a lot premium.
Correct.
And that can be anywhere from $1,500 to $50,000.
Oh, yeah.
Very quickly. So lot selection is actually super important, because if you're going to resell this home down the road, let us have some input on what that $40,000, $50,000 spread might look like in the future.
Yeah.
And especially what it looks like for appraised value. Because we could be talking about a quarter-acre lot in one part of the subdivision and a quarter-acre lot in another part of the subdivision, and there could be a $30,000 difference. And there's some high sellability factors there, but maybe not too many appraisal. There's not. I think a lot of appraisers will have a hard time finding that kind of value. So we have the base price, we have lot premiums, and then the evils of the home fitting center. So once you once you sort of choose a model, a floor plan that you want to build, and you get the base price, and then you reserve the lot, eventually you're going to go to a home fitting center, and this is where people get in a lot of trouble.
I think one really good tip and that I like to do and have my clients do is, we go through the model home and it's beautiful. Sometimes it just blows you away, and it's making people want to, get excited about building. What I like to ask the builder rep there is, hey, do you have this same floor plan, this same home under construction somewhere else in the community that's maybe a little bit more of the base package?
Yeah.
So that we can go see the base package and compare that to the model homes and get an idea of a little better idea of what my client's home is going to look like when
See
it's
if
built.
they have the same tingling sensation.
Yes, and a lot of times, it's not that it's disappointing to go into something that's not the model home, that's their regular base package with very few upgrades, but it just, again, setting those expectations so that they know what to expect. But back to the fitting center. I try, when I was doing this professionally, I would just let a husband and wife, for example, I'd say, here's the options, here's the choices, and they would just go at it for 2 or 3 hours. Mm-hmm. And it can be a challenge to pick out those colors. Some builders make it a little bit easier where they sort of minimize or squeeze the amount of choices that you can make. So they'll have different color palettes that you have to stick with. So you're
different packages that
you're choosing. Mm-hmm. But you said the evils of home fitting center. What do you mean by that? What's your experience been?
Well, I mean, depending on the builder and what their package includes, what we'd call standard features.
Right.
Again, some builders in this valley don't even include air conditioning as a standard feature.
That used to be the case a ton. There still are some builders. I just think that's ridiculous.
And then you have some builders whose standard features are granite in the kitchen and granite in the bathrooms as well, and there's tile everywhere. So it's hard to know, but you'll have some builders, you'll go into a home fitting center and you'll put $40,000 in there just to make it look nice.
Yeah.
And you'll have some builders where you may only have to put in $15,000.
And that's a question you can ask the builder rep. Hey, give me an average of what people are spending on upgrades with your homes. And there are some builders that they track that pretty carefully, and they're saying, somewhere between 8 and 10 or 10 and 12,000. Mm-hmm. And then there are others where it's quite a bit more expensive.
Mm-hmm. So you go through and you kind of add all these things in the cart and check out and try to get a price. And then you'll also be sitting down and you'll have an opportunity to make some structural changes. And that could be, are we want a fireplace? Do we want to have an outside entrance into the basement?
Third car garage.
Third car garage, thank you. That's the obvious one.
Master suite. So sometimes a builder will they'll give you a floor plan that has not a great master suite, but they have an alternative upgraded master suite, maybe with the double vanities, a separate shower, and a tub.
Right. Yeah, they'll do bay windows, or they'll bump out a wall, or we can do this or that. And so you see it. Can you see how difficult it is to finally get to the price?
It takes some time.
What is this thing going to cost me? And it takes some time. And the reality is that usually when you pick the floor plan and you pick out the lot, they'll ask for a deposit that will hold everything. And that deposit can be anything from $500 to 2% of the base price. And every builder works it differently. So there's just a lot to consider there. Then when you go through the home fitting center and you've gone and done all your structural changes, there's typically another deposit, and that can be a pretty significant deposit. Why? Because the builder is going to start to implement all your crazy choices that you made. And that can be upwards of, it can be 5%, or it can be 30% of everything that you picked out in the design center. So there's a lot of ways that they can do that. But you do need to have generally speaking, you need to have a little bit of cash on hand for semi-custom.
Yes, you do. You do. Those construction deposits. Again, you put some money up front to kind of hold the lot. Mm-hmm. Maybe some builders might call it a lot reservation, something like that. But then once you go through this process that Justin just described, there's a construction deposit. It's really important to understand how that works. In a lot of cases, that construction deposit, as soon as you pay that, is non-refundable. So you've got to understand that. And that can be $20,000, $25,000 pretty commonly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can be. So you've picked everything, and then they submit the plans to the city. That can take upwards of a month. It can take as little as 2 weeks. Then they scratch the earth with a big old digger. And what's the build time? And what do they tell you the build time is?
Yeah,
And then what does it end up being?
Well, that part that you just mentioned about going through the city and getting the building permit, builders don't have a ton of control over that.
Right.
I mean, they can obviously submit a complete package and do a good job of making sure that all the check boxes are met in that application. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes there's some delays there, but they're pretty good. Some builders, once they're able to actually scratch the dirt, they will give you a time frame, and that might be 120 days from when they're digging out that foundation to when you're doing your final walkthrough, which is a pretty, that's 4 months. And some builders are pretty good to sticking to that. But with construction, we'll probably talk about this, there are going to be delays. There's things along the way that are going to be problematic that you've got to deal with.
I would say it can be anywhere from, you said 4 months, but that's from when you dig. There's an extra month in the city. And there might be an extra 2 weeks because you're picking out all your things. So anywhere from 6 months, and guys, we've seen builders, even on simple homes, go past a year, well past a year. And that is frustrating as heck.
6 months, I think, is on the minimum. I think I think my clients are generally getting through this process with a number of different builders in the 8 to 9 month range.
Okay. So once they've started, can you make any changes on these semi-custom homes?
Well, you can, but you need to be aware of what their change order policy is. Yeah. Again, you make changes up to a certain point. I mean, if they've poured the foundation and you're talking about foundational changes, no, that's not going to happen. But a change to, even a change to something as simple as a change to the countertops, they're going to charge you a fee, but it's problematic on their side too, because they need to make sure that it's in stock and that sometimes they've already put the work orders out. They're ordering these things way in advance of the countertops actually arriving to the job site. So change orders are costly, and they are costly for a reason. They're meant to be discouraging, but it is difficult for a big production builder to turn on a dime. They don't turn on a dime. Not very nimble.
No, it's all about systems and process, and if they'll allow a change, which many of them just don't.
Yeah.
You're always tempted during this construction process to go out there as a homeowner or as a prospective owner of that home. They don't really want you on site, but you do it anyway. People do. But you really should probably be very cautious. Don't bring the kids. New construction is very dangerous.
It is a construction site. And the kids, there's lots of things the kids could get into. A lot of builders in their contracts say, we don't want you on the site. Mm-hmm. But they're sort of wink, wink. Yeah, come on out. You can do that. But they say that and they make you sign that so that they're not liable. Now, if you do want to visit the site, you can call the construction superintendent that will generally be assigned to you. And a lot of times they'll meet you out there. They'll make some time for you to go through that.
Okay, so the big question on building a home is how to time the sale of your existing home. See, there's a lot of builders that won't even allow you. They won't even start the home unless your home is sold. Some builders, because the market's been good, they'll say, yeah, we're okay with you holding on to your home. And then it becomes a really big timing issue, right? Because new construction, the end date, the completion date is always a moving target. So when do you put your home on the market? See, that's what's so difficult about it. If they're saying to you, we're a month out or a month and a half out, you can almost guarantee it's 2 to 2.5 months. But there's no guarantee. They really could finish it up that quickly. And so the best thing that you do is put your home on the market at an aggressive price and try to control the terms of that sale. And what I mean by that is sometimes you might just give the buyer a good enough deal that they will let you stay and lease back in the home that you're relinquishing. And we've done that successfully many times. And we'll either buy 2 weeks for free. The buyer will give them 2 weeks for free, or we might actually put a short-term lease agreement in place for 2 months. Would be the absolute outside, that you could get a buyer to bite off on. But there's a moving target. There's always a chance, guys, that there is a short layover somewhere. And that might look like moving in with family. It might look like an Airbnb. It might look like some kind of a short-term rental. And so you have to have an exit strategy because it's hard to time these just right.
It's really hard to time that, and I think the key is that Justin and I would come out and evaluate your home. Probably are already familiar with it, but let's talk strategy about timing. I mean, what time of year is it going to need to go on the market?
Right.
I mean, is it going to be the wintertime or the summertime? What kinds of things do you need to be working on while your home's under construction, working on your existing home to get it ready to market so that it will sell more quickly? If there's a home that we feel like it's going to take some time, then we probably need to start that process a lot earlier. But some homes are just in a price range, in an area, their condition is so good that we say, look, I think we can put this on the market 2 months before you're ready to finish your new home. So having that advice of a good realtor who understands the market, that's going to be really key to time that correctly.
So as the home is nearing completion, then you have to start on your permanent financing as well. And most builders have a preferred lender. In fact, they use several carrots in order for you to use their preferred lender. They might say, if you use our lender, we'll give you, $4,000 worth of upgrades in our home fitting center. Or they'll say, we'll pay up to $4,000 in closing costs. And they'll say, and you get your keys the day of that you sign the papers.
Correct.
And there's a lot of things that they can use. And is using the preferred lender a good thing or a bad thing in your experience?
It can be a good thing, but there are some gimmicks out there. And so you've got to be smart enough to be able to work through what they're offering versus maybe what somebody else that's in the lending business can do for you. And again, this is key where your realtor can really help you to work through those items. But some builders, legitimately, you're getting some real benefit with using their preferred lender. But I've had a number of times where somebody has been pre-qualified with Keith Snow Security Home Mortgage, for example, and they have compared what the builder's preferred lender can do with what Keith can do, and Keith sometimes comes out on top on those deals. And it's because the builder's preferred lender might be increasing the interest rate a little bit to cover some of the incentive costs. And so you have to look at, okay, is granite countertops, is that something that's more beneficial to me than a lower interest rate? And, if you're looking long term, that lower interest rate may be a lot more attractive than those granite countertops.
Yeah, and it's difficult because you may have started building this in February, and now it's November, and guess what? Interest rates may have changed.
That's a real possibility.
That's one of the, not dangers, but it's one of the caveats to new construction is that you can't foresee what rates are going to do. And so maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to custom homes. To wrap this section up, what are some of the other costs associated with new construction?
Well, I think some of the bigger costs are landscaping. Yeah. Most cities are going to make the builder put in that front yard landscaping. But the backyard landscaping is not going to be put in, nor is a sprinkler system. Fencing around a property.
People don't have an idea how expensive fencing is.
Well, landscaping, sprinkler systems, fencing.
It's all
we're talking
expensive.
about some pretty significant money there. Here's another one, too, is people move in and all of a sudden it occurs to them, or it occurs to them maybe on the final walkthrough when we're going through the home, wow, there's no blinds on these windows. And you could spend some decent money on blinds and window coverings on a new construction.
And then probably the biggest cost associated with a new build is, do you want to finish that basement? And when do you want to finish that basement? And so it kind of takes you back, right? You say, okay, what is a fully maximized home? I'm talking landscaped, fenced, blinds, fully finished basement, etc. What's that going to cost me? And then you come back to, what could I buy in the existing market? Even if I had to remodel something that's maybe 10 or 15 or 20 years old. And that's how that's kind of the analysis that you should take when you're considering new homes. New homes, of course, have lots of appeal to them, but let's try to make a good financial decision on them as well. And so really important things to consider.
I might just mention one other thing, too. I think a lot of our clients are budgeting in money, too, for some new furnishings. Yeah. Just because it's a brand new home, they want to put in new furnishings, and so they're spending a lot of money on that. Another one is refrigerators. A lot of builders, very few builders, very few builders would include a refrigerator. And so budgeting some money in for some new furnishings, some new appliances, blinds, decor. I mean, most of our clients are spending some pretty good money after closing on these new homes.
And you're going to feel tapped.
Yeah.
You're going to feel tapped. And this is why, we encourage people, number one, because we're Dave Ramsey's endorsed local providers, we want people to clear all of their debt if they can. And then we want them to stockpile cash. And we're going to talk about that especially for custom homes.
Right.
Okay, well, let's compare all of that with a custom home approach. And this is something, if you're really going to go that route, you want to build a custom home. You don't wake up one day and you say, I think we should build a home. And then you think you're going to get this project underway in the next month or two. I've done that personally. And I wouldn't say I've failed miserably, because I have maybe a little bit of an upper hand. I've been through this process a number of times. But I'll tell you, it's difficult to do that. When you think about building a home, you should go to all the parade of homes in Utah that you can travel around to and see. You should be pinning like crazy. You should be thinking about what it is that your family needs and projecting out, what does my family look like? My wife and I have a beautiful custom home, and we built it. We had one kid. We didn't know if any more were coming. Well, now we have 4 kids, right? I probably would have built it differently. What are your needs going to be over the next 10 or 15 years? So you really need to prepare to build a custom home.
Right. Here's another thing too that I've had some trouble with, even as much experience as I've had, is just you're looking at a floor plan, and I read floor plans and blueprints very well because I've done it for a long time. Some people, they look at the floor plan, it's a little overwhelming. Yeah. But getting an idea of what the dimensions are. So let me give you an example. On our cabin, I just didn't catch this. We designed it. I mean, you and I came up with it. We drew it on this whiteboard behind us many, many different times, and then got with the designer and had it put on blueprints. But the front porch, we got this beautiful front porch. It goes all the way across the front of the house. And it's a little small. I think we've got a 6 foot, but by the time we put the railing on it, it just is small. I would have loved to have had that gone out another foot. And that would have made a big difference. So things like room sizes, closet sizes, you really got to spend some time. There's nothing wrong with measuring your own rooms where you're at currently, or drawing out on with string or rope these
I've
dimensions.
Done
We've done that
on the gym floor.
Yeah.
I've been able to
So you really gotta look at those dimensions as well.
Okay. What are some of the costs associated with home building in general? But what are some things that people just don't get a real good feel for?
You will be surprised when you go to the city in which you're building and you get a list of their impact fees.
Yeah.
You probably won't be prepared unless you've had some experience with that in the past. You won't be prepared at how much it's going to cost to pull that building permit and pay for those impact fees.
Yeah, and to give you an idea, we're talking $18,000 to $25,000 depending on the city. It's a huge cost when you're building a home.
Yeah.
Another thing that people don't take into consideration is the financing charges, because remember, you have closing costs on a construction loan. You have interest that's accruing during that whole build time. Then you have closing costs on a permanent loan. So there's a lot of financing charges.
There are.
You have a contractor fee, unless you can find a contractor that will do it for free. And I
haven't found
one yet.
They need to make a living.
Yeah. So how can you know if this whole project is even feasible? And I guess it starts with, what is it that you want to build? And so I tell people, listen, you've got to sit down and talk about that, and then you've got to involve a designer and an architect. And I'll just tell you from personal experience working with clients, I've seen a lot of people sit down with a designer and architect and spend several $1,000s on plans and never build.
Yeah.
And that's probably okay.
Yeah.
Those are sunk costs. Maybe you'll build it sometime in the future. But it's very difficult to see, is this a feasible project? Because the pricing on all of this is very, very difficult.
Yeah, because this is a custom home and it has not ever been built before. I mean, if you really have designed this home to your specs, because it's never been built before, nobody's ever engineered those plans. Nobody's ever spec'd it out. They've never done the takeoffs for, all the flooring and drywall. I mean, so as opposed to what we were talking about with the production builders, it's all new from ground up. All that estimating has to be done from scratch.
Right. So if you were to work with a designer, an architect, and those are different people, by the way, you could hire a designer to do your plans, and then they have to take them to an engineer and have them signed off, or an architect can do that, both those functions. If you get a full set of plans, I mean a full set of plans. I'm not talking about your little floor plan on one sheet of paper.
Right.
We're talking about the lighting schematics. I mean, the whole 9 yards. This is a thick bunch of plans there. Then you could send them out to contractors to have them fully bid. Most contractors would say, I could shoot from the hip, but don't hold me to it, if they'd even be willing to take a shot at it. And it would be a huge range, 500 to 650,000, they would tell you. They just cannot give you a bid unless they have a full set of plans, which is going to cost you $3,000 to $5,000 to $6,000, somewhere in that range on a fairly modest home, nice home. So that's how we can start to at least make sense of the numbers, is to have it bid out. And, you might involve 3 different builders. And depending on how these builders react to your request, this is such a crucial part. If they're giving you problems and they're late on their bids and they're fighting you the whole 9 yards the whole way through, this is probably not your builder. There's a lot of due diligence that you need to go through when choosing a builder.
Well, and even when they're, in fairness to them too, even when they're estimating this out, they may not know yet what kind of tile you're putting in, and tile can be, $1 a square foot to $10 a square foot. What kind of countertops, how fancy the cabinets are going to be. They may not know some of those finishes. And so what they're doing sometimes is just in their budget, in their estimate, they're putting a line item allowance for flooring, for cabinets, for countertops, and that sort of thing. And that may or may not cover what it is you're hoping to get in the home in terms of finishes.
Yeah. Well, and this is a really interesting question because the big cost, of course, of new construction is finding a good lot that you want to build on. And do you find a lot and then do you have the home designed to it? That's what I had to do. I built on this crazy, weird, and odd lot that I actually had to design the home according to the lot. And if you were on one of our benches and you have some real, slope and things like that, you'd have to design it really towards that lot. Or do you design your floor plans and then go out searching for a lot that would accommodate that floor plan? These are questions we can't answer for you necessarily.
It's not a 100% answer, but my opinion is you're designing the home according to the lot.
Yeah.
You could be on a corner lot. The topography has a lot to do with it. Sometimes you end up having to put the garage down below the house. Mm-hmm. Which direction it faces. Is it north facing? Do you want to be south facing? Mm-hmm. There's just so much to that. Yeah. And of course that can affect tremendously your costs. So I would find the lot first and design the house secondly. In most cases, it's not a 100% blanket statement.
Well, and then not only the cost of acquiring the lot, but talk about potentially having to retain the backside of that lot, to excavate that lot, to maybe bring in all the rest of the utilities. Holy moly!
It might appear like you're getting a good price on a lot. Mm-hmm. But getting some advice when you're doing some due diligence on that lot from an experienced builder or an experienced excavator prior to buying that lot is going to be really valuable to you, because they're going to be able to look at that lot and have a vision of how they're going to be able to put that home on there. And lots are different sizes and they have different setback requirements. And so, knowing what your envelope is or the buildable area is really important. So again, do you design the home based on the lot? Yeah, I think you do, because every lot's going to present some different challenges and may require you to make some modifications to your home.
Okay, so you have a fully engineered set of plans. You've sent those out for bid. Again, we're trying to explore if this is a feasible project within your budget. And then let's say you find a lot. How are you going to finance that lot? This is a tricky thing to do, and this is where we can add a lot of input. You could pay cash for it.
That would be ideal, obviously.
If you've been saving your money. You could go out and put it under contract and then take it to a credit union to finance that. Now, what do lot loans look like? I mean, they're amortized differently. You're not going to get a 30-year amortization on a lot. They're going to have a down payment requirement of somewhere between 10 and 30%, depending on the bank. They're going to have a higher interest rate. They'll have closing costs associated with it. They don't want you to sit on that lot for 30 years. So usually in 5 years, they'll have a balloon payment or some kind of a renegotiation. So financing a lot for a long period of time before you build is not the wisest thing to do.
You can definitely get financing, but it may not be your best strategy.
Yeah. So what's another strategy for financing or acquiring that lot?
We've had a lot of clients actually use the equity in their home through a home equity line of credit to be able to finance that lot, and that can make a lot of sense. If you really, if you find a lot and the seller's willing to work with you a little bit in terms of the timing, one really great way to do it, and we've had clients do that too, is if you can really get everything put together, your plans, your builder, your engineering, your lot, then you go get that construction loan, and the first draw, and we'll get into some construction loan financing here, I think, that first draw is going to pay the seller of that lot off. So that first draw of that construction loan goes to paying off that lot.
Yeah. And so let's just kind of outline that a little bit, because there's so much that has to happen during that process. I'm hoping that you have really considered what it is that you're going to build. I'm hoping that you have a set of plans. But we do work with clients who don't have a set of plans, not sure what they're going to build. They love that lot. Somehow they're going to make this work. So we put the lot under contract with maybe a 60-day fuse if the seller would allow that. That's a long closing, right? Mm-hmm. And then within that 60 days, what do you have to do? You got to sit down with a ready and able designer to rip through some plans so that those plans can be taken to the bank, and the bank's going to send the appraiser out to the lot, and he's going to look at your plans, and they're going to say, this is what we think it would appraise for. And then if the appraises for $600,000, they may want you to put 10% into the project, and then we've got to get it. Yeah. And then we've got to get through the city in some cases. Also, that when we can close the construction loan, that first draw is the lot draw that pays for the lot. That is so hard to do within 60 days. It can be done. We've done it many times. It's not necessarily the best way to do it.
Again, it depends on whether that seller is if they need to close and cash out in 30 days, it's just not going to happen that way.
Yeah,
but if it's and you're going to put some money down on that lot for that seller to hold that for you and to work with you on that. There's going to be some significant earnest money that's probably going to go non-refundable at some point.
Yeah.
But that actually is a really convenient way to finance that lot was the point. But there are other strategies as we're talking.
Yeah. To me, I think that makes the most sense if you have a home equity line of credit mixed with some of your own personal cash. The home equity line of credit, remember, those payments are going to be stiff because your HELOCs are a very tempting and good interest rate, but they amortize typically a HELOC much shorter. So you end up with some pretty significant payments. So there's so much to talk about in terms of the timing on all of that. But it can be done. Now, who can hold the construction loan? This is worth talking about, right? If you want to go to your credit union and put together the construction loan, that's a lot of work for you. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of work. And they're going to ask you questions. Well, are you going to sell your home or are you going to try to keep it? And we want, a huge cash injection. And it can be difficult for the average person to get a construction loan. What's the other alternative?
Well, the other alternative is to work with a general contractor who has sources of financing, construction loan financing for that project. Mm-hmm. And some builders may prefer to operate that way. It makes getting their construction draws quicker. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they just have a pretty long-standing relationship with whoever's financing that.
Lending partner.
And so it's maybe it's less rigorous for them. I mean, they have that relationship, and that's beneficial.
Well, and that banker that has been serving this contractor probably has his tax returns and his bank statements and his liability insurance and everything that he needs, and that can happen pretty quickly. And so I kind of like that scenario where if there's a builder that's willing to carry the financing, it's a good thing. See, the builder will sign a contract with you, right? And the contract will say you agree to buy this home when it's done, and so he can take this basically a pre-sold at this point. A pre-sale into his lending partner and say, hey, I've got a family I'm building this home for, and they're going to perm up.
Right.
And it's a really easy deal, and the contractor loves it because they know how to make those draws, as you were referring to. They know how to get that money in a timely manner. I love the idea of the builder carrying that construction loan. I think it makes a world of difference. Now, will they do that for free? No. All of the points and all of the financing charges and the interest, it just flows right.
They're going to pass
right
that
down
on to you. Yeah.
Now, a few things to consider here. Build times on custom homes can be really long. I just consulted with a family last week. They're a year and a half. They've been building it for a year and a half. And this is $1 million home. So it was abnormally long, but that can happen. And you have to go get extensions on your construction financing, and it can be very difficult. But custom homes just take a long time. Sure. They really do, and especially in this market. So it's something to consider. Hiring an interior decorator. That can add a lot of cost, but at the same time, it could really add a lot of appeal.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish that I would have consulted more with some interior decorators and designers. In a custom home, will you go over budget?
Absolutely. I mean, that's going to be an expectation that you're going to need to have. And so you can build into some of the construction financing, these contingency reserves to cover some of those overages. Yeah. But, we've had a lot of things going on with China, with the trade embargoes and things like that Trump's been involved with. And so a lot of building materials have gone up considerably. So if you would have started a year ago building a home and you're finishing it now, you would have experienced some significant price increases in a number of different building materials because of those types of factors that are well beyond your ability to predict.
And this is where it gets a little bit dangerous, right? Because your construction loan is only set up to draw out at $600,000, but you just spent $700,000 on that home. Yeah. Where's the appraisal at this point? The appraisal may have been $600,000 when you had that done for the new construction financing. But now that we're ready to perm up, hopefully the appraisal comes up from that. It could be at $650,000, but you might have to have a significant amount of cash because you went so far over that you may not be able to
especially
perm up
if
like you hope to.
You're in a situation where you're the nicest. You've built the nicest home in the neighborhood.
Well, that's part of it too. But remember, a custom home is we add everything. I mean, all the niceties, all of the upgrades, and appraisers do not and cannot in their report account for all of those things that you've done. So be very careful. This is why I say stockpile some cash, because you need cash to pull a construction loan. If the builder holds the construction loan, the builder is going to require a fairly significant deposit on his end to build that home. Yeah. So you need some cash. I would say if you're in that here in Utah County, if you were in the $500,000 to $700,000 range, you could build a very nice home.
Right. On a decent lot.
On a very nice lot.
Yeah. But I have people all the time thinking that they can go through this custom process for $350,000 or $400,000. It's
even
not
the
possible.
Production builders right now, even like say Eagle Mountain or down in Payson, their new construction is every bit of $330,000 to $350,000 just starting out for just a very modest home,
right?
Unfinished basement, etc. So I think you have to be very realistic in taking this approach. And is building a custom home, is it a good investment? What do you think?
Depends on your time frame, on your how long you think you're going to be there. I mean, I'm not that bent out of shape if I'm building a custom home, and of course it appraises at the end. I'm okay that way, but that maybe I'm a little overbuilt for the time, right? Mm-hmm. So that 3, 4, 5 years go by,
Yeah.
I'm starting to gain equity in that. So if I'm looking at building a home and I'm going to be there for 15 years,
Good.
I don't care if I'm pushing the max value of maybe what that whole house is the day I close on it.
Right. So my own experience, the home that we just built that we're in, I started in 2007, and then I finished in 2008, and the market was sliding rapidly. And the time I was done, I'm glad I could perm up. I had to cash out some things so that I could perm up on it. And it wasn't until just the last few years, maybe in the last 3 years, where I've actually kind of been back to what I'd spend on the home. And so for me, it has not been a great investment, but do I love the home? It's
Yeah.
so cool. I have a one-of-a-kind home. It's amazing. Maybe the last thing that I want to point out, do you get everything that you want when you build a custom home?
I think that's really difficult to do. I mean, people talk about building their dream homes, you know, and I guess it depends on what your dreams are. I mean, some people's dreams are a little more modest than others.
Yeah.
But even with the cabin that we just finished in, maybe October of 2018, I suppose is when we finished that. I love it. It's beautiful. When we bring people up there, they're just in awe of it. But I look around and see some of the design flaws that we made, and some of the mistakes we made, wishing we would have done some things differently.
Yeah, people. I tell people that you just don't. I mean, that's the question, because your likes and your dreams change and your family evolves, and you go through with such a critical eye because you had every opportunity to do it right and you didn't, and so that adds a little bit of what's the word? I'm not going to say stress, but it's almost a little bit painful because you could have done it a different way.
Well, and when you're over budget, and when you get to start, later on in this process where you're picking out some of your finishes, you're like, you know what? I had my heart set on this type of countertop. I don't have the money for that anymore. Now I've got to downgrade a little bit on some of my finish selections, and so that can happen. But you could always build again too. I mean, there's always that opportunity as well.
Maybe
Trends
by the fifth
change.
home, you would nail it.
Trends change as
Yes,
well.
they do.
I mean, you go to Prada Homes one year, and there's all
You're so excited about everything
you're
that they're
excited about
that you're seeing.
something, and then you incorporate that into the new home you're building, and then you go to the Prada Homes the next time around, and it's something different, and you're like, geez, I wish I would have done that.
Yeah.
So that's a really hard thing to really, really nail it. I mean, I guess if you did it enough times, you're going to get better at that process, obviously. Right. But hey, you know what? You had a fun experience. You probably still have a wonderful home that you're very happy with, and don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that was a really productive discussion. We have this kind of a consultation many times a year with different clients. So I hope that maybe we can just send them this great podcast or this video, because it's very, very helpful. People want to know this stuff. Building's a lot of fun. We've done it, and it's satisfying. It can be tricky. It can be tear your hair out, at times, but it's a lot of fun.
You must have been really stressed out in 2008 because, we built this building and finished in 2008.
Yeah.
In fact, we went to go get our permanent financing on it in the fall of 2008. Mm-hmm. And most banks, they told their loan officers no more loans.
Yeah, especially commercial loans.
Commercial loans. And I remember that being, I'm losing sleep over that. Yeah. You had a house going on that year too, and that must have been some stressful time for you.
It was stressful. It was stressful because of all the decisions we had to make. If I'll let you know a little secret. The tile that's in our restrooms, that's the same tile in my master bathroom. I was like, I don't care anymore. I like this tile. Put it there. Put it in my house. I
think we ended up with some cabinets in our office too that were originally for your house.
Yeah. Anyway, that's
funny.
enough. But it's that was quite a year for me. But anyway, new construction. Consider it. Lots of fun.